Hi everyone, welcome to part 3, and this part went a little bit long, over 1 hour. Please be patient because it's going to be a lot of coding and you need to pay a lot of attention because the videos are in fast pace. Make sure you pause, make sure you deepen in the code, and if you don't understand something and the question is easy, go ahead in the comment section. But if there is something you do not really understand and need help with, you're free to join my Discord server where I can talk to you. And finally, everything I ask from you guys is to subscribe on my channel, leave a like, and leave a good comment. That's what motivates me to do this 1 hour tutorials. So with no other words, let's go straight to the tutorial. The last part was that we stopped on the Glock with a magazine that has an instant static mesh component, and we made some bullets. And also we have a Glock where we can press our trigger. So this part is going to be a little bit code heavy because we're going to set up our main functionalities. Make sure you have a guns folder from the previous tutorials, and we are going to our handgun, we're going to our audio. Now we're going to set up the sound cues. Those are basically the cues that can modify our sounds. So we'll start with our cocked sound. That happens when our slide reaches its maximum position. So let's actually right click on handgun cocked. Now let's code cue handgun cocked. Let's actually go ahead, press here. So what we're going to change here is that we're going to insert a modulator. The purpose of modulator is to increase or decrease a pitch of a sound it is used for. So I'll actually demonstrate you what it means. So we can click on modulator and we can change some values here. So what I found is working is that pitch min is 0.9, pitch max is 1.1, and everything else will leave the same. So if you press and play cue, every time our sound is a little bit different. Now we can close our cue editor and go ahead and create the same one for handgun dry fire. This one is here. Right click, create cue. Now let's call it cue handgun dry fire. Exactly the same we're doing for our handgun mag in. Cue handgun mag in. The same we're doing with our handgun mag out. Afterwards, we're going to work with our shooting. As you can see here, we have 3 sounds for our shot. So let's actually create a cue for one of them. Let's call it cue handgun shot. Open it. Instead of one sound here, we can use our others too. So let's actually select this one and drag it right here. We can break this link and we can use a node called random. So what it does, it selects a random sound between the inputs. Let's actually add one more input and we can input those handgun shots here. The output of here will be random sound from those 3, and we'll use a modulator. And we can put the same settings as we used to. And now, if you connect it to output and you hit play, you will hear random sounds and they will be modulated. Afterwards, we're going to create a cue for our handgun slide grabbed. So right click, create cue, handgun slide grabbed. And we're doing the same for handgun slide released. Cue handgun slide released. And that's pretty much it. So you can double check you made everything correct. We can Ctrl Shift S to save everything. And now we can start working on our gun. So let's actually click on our gun, go to our blueprint gun, or otherwise you can go to our content and search PP gun, and you can double click here. As for grabbing our slider, we'll need to create another graph to make everything look beautiful. So let's click on here and let's call our grab slider grab. So now we'll modify our handle a little bit. As explained in the first tutorial, the logic of our gun is that our handle will be grabbed, but in our pistol we only have slide. But in order to grab our slide, we need to grab the handle, because our slide is the child of handle. So as you can see here, if I actually select the handle and I move it, we'll see that everything else moves. If I grab the slide, the handle will be on the same spot, as you can see here. So our aim is to grab our handle, because everything else is just a child of it. So we can go ahead and add a box collision. We can call it slide grab collision. We can go to its collision settings. We're going to set it up as a custom collision preset. We're going to ignore everything except for curl grabbable. It will block curl grabbable and it will block magazine. We can hit compile. Now let's just adjust our box so it fitted our slider. So as I recently said, this box collision is responsible for grabbing the slider. So if I grab somewhere here, we'll actually grab a slider. But if I grab somewhere here, we'll not grab the slider. And under the slide grab collision, we can add our curl grab component. Go ahead and set grab type to our reload handle and set our gun type to handgun, and we can leave it like this. Afterwards, under our slide mesh, we're going to add a skeletal mesh. I'm doing it for the reason that we are now attaching hand to the mesh, but we are not attaching mesh to the hand. So in our case, we'll attach our mesh to slider. Therefore, I'm making it a child of slider. Let's call our skeletal mesh as slide hand R. We can Ctrl D, slide hand L, where L is for left, R is for right. In our slide hand L, we can choose our hand and we can apply specific animation. So you should click on your animation mode and select use animation asset. And here we'll choose our recently created animation called AnimQK handgun slider. So as you can see now, our hand seems like grabbing a slider. Let's actually fit our hand to the slider. Okay, so I'm done with my hand left. So the same way we're going to our slider hand right, we're going to select our hand, and we're going to apply the same animation as we have applied to our left hand. So go to animation mode, choose use animation asset, and choose AnimQK handgun slider. Just for your comfort, you can go ahead, turn on the left hand visibility, so we didn't see this hand. And the only thing we have to do with our hand right is that we have to flip it to the y-axis to make it a right hand. And now, let's adjust it. Okay, I'm done. So you can turn on the slide hand left visibility and make sure you like how the hands look like. And what I've just noticed is that we made our left hand a right hand. So what we can do to fix this, just rename it to R1. This one we rename to our L, and this one we name to our R. So that the right hand was right hand and the left hand was left hand. And afterwards, you can hide their visibility because we will not need it. So those points are actually the location and rotation of where we will attach our hands. So we'll use these points, rotation, and location to attach our VR pawn's hand. Now we can go ahead to our slider graph. We go ahead and click on our curl grab component because we are going to add some functionality to onGrabbed and also to onDropped. We can move onDropped a little bit down, like here. And now we are going to create a function that will attach our hands mesh to those positions right here. So let's go ahead and create a function, and we can call it attach hand to slide. As an input to this function, we'll have our motion controller as input, and it will be of a type motion controller. Afterwards, you can go ahead and promote it to a variable. Now let's call it slide grab motion controller. So now if we go back to our VR pawn, the controller will be motion controller right grip and motion controller left grip. So what we'll have to do is now to access this hand left and hand right. And as you can see, hand left and hand right are child components of our motion controller right grip and left grip. So we can go ahead and get children components. This will include all the components we have under our motion controller right here. So our static mesh and our skeletal mesh. And it will create our for each loop with break. So once we go through every element of those components and we find our hand, we'll just break our loop. So let's go ahead and check if our array element is our B mannequin XR. Just reminding you, our skeletal mesh here is of type B mannequin XR, and this hand is also the same type. So if the cast is successful, it means we have found our mesh, we can promote it to a variable. And let's call it slide motion controller hand mesh. And after we have promoted it to a variable, we can just break our loop. And let's make some reroute nodes to make it look better. And afterwards, we need to see which hand we need to attach our mesh to, whether it's hand right or whether it's hand left. So go ahead and take our curl grab component, get held by hand, and we check if it equals to right. In case it equals to right, we are going to connect it to the completed pin. And in case it's right, we're going to use the node attach component to component. We're going to attach our hand mesh component. It will be a target, and our parent, since it's hand right, will attach it to slide hand R. And let's make a reroute node here. And we can just go ahead and copy this node. I'm using Ctrl D to do this, and we'll connect it to the false pin. And if it's hand left, we're going to attach our controller hand mesh as a target to our parent slide hand L. And make sure location rule and rotation rule is snap to target, and here as well. And afterwards, we can add a return node. So this code will accept our motion controller, this one, and it will look for every child component it has. And in case it finds the B mannequin XR, it will look for which hand is holding the slider and will attach the mesh of the hand that is holding to one of those hands here. And after we're done, we can just go back to our slider graph and attach hand to slide, and we can use our newly created function right here. And make sure you connect your motion controller output from your onGrabbed to input parameters of our attach hand to slide. If we want to attach our hand, we also need to detach our hand. So let's go ahead and create a detach function. Now let's call it detach hand from slide. When we are detaching our hand from slide, we need to attach our hand mesh back to our VR pawn. So let's use the same attach component to component. And now our target is our mesh and parent is our slide grab motion controller. And make sure your location, rotation rule, and scale rule are set to snap to target. Because if we look at our slide hand right and slide hand left, we'll see that Y scale here is different. Therefore, we need our scale rule set to snap to target. Afterwards, we need to see which hand we're detaching. So let's go ahead and get our curl grab component, get held by hand, and check if it equals to right. We can do a branch. Now it's really important, because when we attach our hand to slide, we use attach component to component. It means that all hierarchy in our VR pawn breaks, so hand left actually goes away from here, and it gets slide hand R or slide hand L rotation and location. Therefore, after we are attached to the back, we need to set the same rotation and location we have here. So for our both hands, as we can see, the rotation is different. So let's start with our hand right. So now, if it's right, we need to get our slide motion controller hand mesh and add relative rotation. And the value here should be the same as right hand's rotation. So I can go ahead and copy those values. And now, as you can see, our hand right and hand left has same location. So we also need to set our relative location. Set relative location. And the values here will be the same ones from our hand left and hand right location. So I can just go ahead and copy them. Like this, and for the hand left, we have this rotation. Therefore, we can copy this add relative rotation node. Our target will be slide motion controller hand mesh, and we can connect the full spin here. And we can copy the rotation values. And also, what you should take into consideration is that our hand left now has a different scale compared to our hand right. So we will have to set our scale too. So let's go ahead and get our mesh's relative scale 3D. We're going to multiply it by 1, minus 1, and 1. And we're going to set relative scale 3D, connect the result of this pin to here, and execution pin to this execution pin. And afterwards, as we can see, our hand left and hand right have same location. However, we already have this node, so all we have to do is just to connect the execution pin from here to here, and add a return node. Okay, we can go back to our graph, and on dropped, we go detach hand from slide. We can hit compile and save. Also, from the previous tutorial, I didn't pay enough attention. We should change some things in curl grab component. So you can go ahead in your content folder and type curl grab component. You should land on your try grab function. And what we can do is that we can add some additional functionality. For instance, we can check which gun we are holding. That's an essential part. So let's move those nodes to the right and insert this one here. In my case, I can leave it like this because I'm showing you how to develop it only for handgun, but in case you have more guns, you must do this. I'm making it only for handgun. And here, pay attention that in last tutorial, I put set left hand animation by object type to right hand. So what we have to do is to delete this, and instead of this function, we should use set right hand animation by object type for the right hand. And instead of gun hold, we have our reload handle. We can hit compile and save. Just for the purpose of experiment, I'll enable those two hands we have set up earlier, and we can go ahead and test our game. So now as I come to my gun, and I'll try to grab the slider, as you can see, my hand turns into the one that you see on your screen. And the same happens for our right hand. So I can go ahead and disable the visibility of the hands, like this. So now if I grab our gun and grab the slider, you can see that it works perfectly. Now let's go ahead and set up the slider movement. So now I've split my screen in two sides. On the right side I have my BP gun, on the left side I have my main. Now we're going to set up our sounds for our gun, and they will be of type sound cue. So let's go ahead and add a variable. We can call it handgun cocked sound, and it will be of type sound cue. Then we duplicate it, pressing Ctrl D. We're making the next one is dry fire. And let's rename it. I'll actually rename it to just cocked sound cue. Then we're going to duplicate it again. So for the magazine sounds, we'll do it inside the magazine, so we're not going to touch it for our gun. Now we have a shot sound cue. Then we duplicate it again. Slide release sound cue. And then we have slide grab sound cue. And that's it. So let's compile. And as you can see now, we can set our sounds right here. So let's go ahead and look for this sound cock. Then for dry fire sound cue, we look for dry fire. Then for shot sound cue, we're looking for shot. So released. And for our grabbed, it's like this. Handgun slide grabbed. Hit compile and save. Make sure we have all the variables set up right here. So we have to set up all 5 variables for every sound cue we have created, except for 2 sound cues for magazine. And as a result, we'll have something like that. And for each sound cue, we'll have a default sound set up right here. For dry fire sound, we'll have a dry fire sound cue from here, and so on. So once we grab our gun, that's when we grab our slide. we want to play a sound, right? So we'll use a function called playSound at location. And our location will be our slide grab collision. We'll get its world location and connect the result pin to here. And our sound will be slide grab sound cue. Like this, we can hit compile and save. So now we are making a setup for our handle to follow our motion controller. So the first thing we'll have to do is to actually create another function, and we can call it get grab offset between motion controller and slide. This function will be responsible for getting an initial offset between our curl grab component and our handle. I'm just going to quickly show what is going to happen if we don't have an initial offset. So imagine our motion controller is somewhere here. Therefore, on the first frame, we are trying to set our handle's position to our motion controller. It is gonna snap right away in the first frame, and we don't want this. So what we are going to do is to implement a variable that will keep the initial offset once we grab our slider. Imagine this picture here. Once we grab our handle, our hand mesh will attach to the handle, and our motion controller will be somewhere here. And at this moment, we are storing the initial distance. So it will be our offset. And after we are starting moving our hand, like here, we are keeping track of its distance from our handle. So it's going to be our distance, and distance is calculated every frame. And therefore, our difference will be this one. That's distance minus offset. And now this variable will apply to our handle using interpolation to make a smooth movement. What we are going to do is to get our curl grab component, get its motion controller reference, get its world location, and for the bottom one, we'll use our handle, get its world location, and we connect it right here. Then we add a return node. We drag this pin to return node, and we can call it initial offset. Then connect this execution pin to return node. And the last step here is to make this function pure. Now, coming back to our graph, we can use this function and promote it to the variable. And let's call it initial grab offset. So afterwards, we need to create a Boolean variable. We'll have it as a flag in case we grab our slider or no, because we don't want to be able to shoot when we are holding our slider. So let's call it slider released. And here we set it to false. So now it's time for our handle to follow our motion controller every frame. Therefore, we're going to set timer by event. And let's say our time is going to be 0.01. It means that every 0.01 seconds, our timer will be repeated. And we will set looping to true. And let's create our custom event. Right here, custom event. And we can call it interpolate slide movement. So this function will be responsible for actually moving the slider. And now we'll need to create variables for setting up our gun. So let's create a variable of type float, and this variable will be responsible for maximum distance our slider can move, like this. So approximately this distance. So that's why we need this float variable we have created. And let's just call it charging handle max distance. And as for default value, I would say it's going to be -5 for this gun. Since we have this variable, we need to restrict moving the handle more than this variable is set. In our case, it's -5. So our handle should not move more than -5. Let's go ahead and create a special function for this, and we can call it clamp slide movement. So as an input of here, we'll have our float variable as input. It's going to be our minimum. Why it's minimum, not maximum? Because our slider goes to negative direction. So here, we'll get our handle, and as I've described recently, we'll get the difference between the distance from motion controller to handle. So we need to get handle's world transform. And here is a crucial step. We need to inverse transform location. And input for this, we're going to get our curl grab component. We're going to get its motion controller reference. We're going to get its world location. We're going to subtract our initial offset, the variable we have created, and connect this pin to here. And afterwards, we are interested only in moving the slider in X direction, like this. So as you can see, only X variable is changing. Therefore here, we'll have to split our structure pin, and for our return value X, we'll have to add, and as addition to this, as I've recently said, we're going to apply this distance offset to our handle. Therefore, we need to get our handle's relative location. And specifically, we need X. And the return value is going to be a float. We're going to clamp. And we're going to use clamp float specifically. And our minimum from here is going to be a minimum from our function, like this. And maximum, we should choose for 0. Because as you can see in our gun, when the slider is going back from -5 to 0, 0 in case of our handle is our initial position. Therefore, our max value is going to be 0. And we're adding a return node, and the value from our clamp will be our return value. And let's connect the clamp slide movement input to the return node. So now we start clamping the values. So let's get our changing handle max distance. Then we're going to use our function clamp slide movement. Then we're going to see if it equals to charging handle max distance. Because the result of this clamp slide movement returns as the value that is between 0 and 5. But in case it equals 5, it means that the slider has reached its maximum distance. We are going to check if it has reached a lock position. We need to create one more Boolean variable and call it reached lock position. By default, it's false because once the gun is spawned, we haven't reached any lock positions yet. And we need to check if it has not reached a lock position. So not Boolean, and connect it right here. And the result of this is going to be branch. But before this, let's just store a clamp slide movement as a variable. And we'll call it current slide offset. It will be representing the X location of our slider. Let's connect it like this. So in case our branch is true, we're going to play the sound of our cocked position. That's where the cocked sound cue should be triggered. But for now, we're not going to do any sound effects. So our true and false pin will go to the same way. Now let's actually get our current offset. And with this current offset, we're going to apply to our handle. So let's get handle, set relative location. We're going to split new location pin and connect current slide offset to new location X. And both true and false nodes will go here. Okay, that's it for interpolation. Then we're going for our onDropped function. And once it detached our hand, we need to set our variables that we have right here. Speaking more precisely, it's going to be slider grab motion controller and slide motion controller hand mesh. So those variables will set to null because we're detaching our hand. And afterwards, we're going to pause timer by function name. Because once we're moving our slider, we can release it, and therefore we have to stop this timer from working. So let's actually go ahead, click here, press F2, copy the name, and insert it right here. And here, once we release, we're going to check if our current slide offset is less than or equals to. And here, we'll have to create a variable that will define the distance when we should play our release sound. So let's create a new variable called offset to play release sound. And by default, I can say let's set it to -2 and check if current slide offset is less than this. And in case it's true, we're going to play the sound effect. But for now, we're skipping it. After this, we're anyway saying that our slider released is true. And here, we have to set a new timer. We'll have the same time, 0.01, and looping enabled. And custom event here. And we'll call it return slide back. So this triggering every 0.01 second will be responsible for returning our slider to its initial position, meaning to 0. So now let's create another function. Interpolate handle to initial position and continue once done. Yeah, that's a big name, but it means everything we need to know. So let's get our handle here inside. We're going to get its relative location and split the structure pin, and we're going to finterp2. And here we'll get our world delta seconds. So get world delta seconds. And we'll create another float variable that will be responsible for how fast the slider should go back. So let's call it slider snap to origin speed multiplier. I can go ahead and set it to 60. So let's go ahead and multiply get world delta seconds by our speed multiplier and connect it to delta time. Our interp speed can be 0.4. That's what I found is working the best. And we're going to set handle's relative location from here. And we're going to split the structure pin because we are working only with x-axis. And we'll check if this value nearly equals to 0 with a tolerance of 0.01. And we are going to return a Boolean result. And let's call it has reached origin. Let's hit compile, go back. Now we can use this function right here. So we can drag it right here, like this. And afterwards, we're checking if it's true. So this function will be run every 0.01 seconds, and it will be checking if our handle has reached its origin. Afterwards, it might get really close to 0, but not totally to 0. So we need to explicitly set it to 0. So we can copy this piece of code here with the handle, come here, and on true, we're just going to set handle's location to 0, 0, 0. Afterwards, we're going to pass timer by by function name, and we're going to copy this function name inside of here, because the timer has already reached its final destination. So we need to disable this for repeating every 0.01 seconds. And afterwards, we're setting our current slide offset explicitly to 0.2. Okay, so let's hit compile and save. Okay, I found one error on my side. I remember I recreated this variable, charging handle max distance, and I forgot to switch it to -5. So make sure you have its default value set to -5. Okay, finally it works. So as you can see now, it's working, and we have a working gun. You can switch the hands, and you can do the same, and everything is smooth. So that's where the issue was snapping. So as you can see, now we can snap, and our handle is not snappy, so we avoided it. You can go ahead and remove the initial offset and see what's gonna happen. It's gonna snap to your hand instantly. And also what I've noticed is that I messed up with my magazine, and I am holding it in the wrong way. So let's actually change it too. Okay, so to fix our magazine, we gotta go to hands. I've been recording this tutorial for 9 hours already, guys, and I can mess things up. Okay, we're going to go to our skeletal mesh of our hand again and look for and clear everything we have right now. So remove all attached assets. Go to our handgun magazine socket. Let's actually use the specific animation. So magazine, and we'll attach a magazine here, and let's enable the angle snapping like that. I'm doing it quick. You can guys play with it a lot to make it perfect for your game. Wow, that looks beautiful. And also, let's hide our bullet. I don't know what it's doing there. We need to make it invisible. Yeah, let's go to our gun and make the bullet, our round, invisible. Like that. Okay, cool. That has been a tough part. We can go back to our slider grab graph. There's nothing hard we're gonna do right now, so relax. We're just gonna make some comments so you could guys actually deep more down into it and understand details. So let's make it look more beautiful. We can also make some comments. So let's make it longer, get the sound here, and we can call this comment play slider grab sound. Here we can make also a comment storing initial offset between motion controller and slide. Just a little bit of your attention. Make sure instead of slide, you have handle. And this variable is just for the state of our slider. So if it's released or it's not released, we'll need it in future. Let's make it look like this. So here we are setting timer for moving the slider while grabbed. Like this, so you could understand it. Let's go to the event that is triggered every 0.01 second. Here we can go to our clamp slide movement. So essentially, if we can split up this in blocks, we can make some comments here. So it's calculating distance between motion controller and handle minus initial offset. In this piece of code here, what we are doing is adding this difference to the handle. In this node here, not allowing our handle to go below charging handle max distance and above 0. We can go back. So this is our current position of handle from 0 to 5 in our case, like this. You can comment this out, checking conditions for SFX, for sound effects. So we'll set it up so that if this is true, we'll actually play our cocked sound cue. But for now, we are not. And here is basically assigning current slide position to handle. Perfect. So that was for our ungrabbed. We can make all of those comments gray, like this. We can make their font, I would say, let's go for 32. I like 32. I don't know why it's my number when doing the comments, because you can see it really good. And now we can cover it up everything here and say grabbing slider. This, and the font can be 50, like this. And we can also make a comment here, attaching motion controller hand mesh to slide hand left or slide hand right, like this. So here is detaching motion controller mesh from slide head L or slide head R to back to motion controller. So here we are clearing out the references, Here we pausing this timer. So pausing slider movement and preparing to move it to origin, like this. So here we checking conditions to play sound effects. Here we make sure slider is released. That's for our future. We just set it up right now, so it didn't bother us in the future. Okay, so here is so move our handle back to origin and return true if came back. Here we check if it came back. If it came back, we anyway implicitly assign handle's location to 0 because, as I recently said, we have error tolerance 0.01 and it can be equal to this number. We need to explicitly set it to 0, and the same with current slide offset, also explicitly set to 0. And here, stop returning the handle to origin. I will turn this to gray and I can cover this to black, saying releasing the handle. Make it black, and font we can say for 50. Okay, I think guys it looks good for me. Just deepen into the code and see if you understand it or no, and let me know in the comments what make you confused. And now let's continue our tutorial. Okay, so now our task is to actually set up the magazine. So let's go ahead, click on magazine, go to our BP magazine, and we're going to add our variable. Let's call it gun type, and its type is going to be gun type. We need it because we can have different type of magazines, right? Because we inherit this class later on. We can have magazine for our assault rifle, we can have magazine for our gun. So prior to attaching, we need to check if our gun type of magazine is the same of gun type of our gun. And now since we're developing for our handgun, just you can choose a handgun here as a default value. Actually, a better way to call it will be magazine type, because it's for magazine. Remember we had a mag in and mag out sound. So what we're going to do, we don't have it now, we're going to set it up. So mag in and mag out. Oh, and yeah, and I found the error. So what we'll have to do is to go to our magazine and go to our remove round function. We're going to our multicast remove cartridge mesh instance. Instead of index, we're going to remove our round because we need to specify the index. And every time we remove our round's number change, and we remove the one that is on top because our index, we always remove zero's element, and that's what we don't have to do. So we need to connect rounds here. So let's go ahead and jump now to our gun. And here in our gun, we're going to create another graph. We can call it attachment handling. And then here, as we remember, we have set up a magazine collision for our magazine. Scroll this menu down, go ahead and click on our component begin overlap. And this event triggers when we are actually getting our magazine to overlap with this collision right here. And we can make it a little bit bigger like this. And we can go ahead and create a variable because our gun should store a variable of our magazine. So let's call it magazine, and it will be of type BP magazine. And before attaching, we need to check if our magazine is already valid, because we don't want to insert a magazine in our gun if we already have a magazine. So let's go ahead and do this. And in case it's not valid, means that we do not have magazine inserted in our gun, we're going to get our other actor, so we need to check which actor we are overlapping. In this case, we trying to cast to BP magazine. And here we're going to use is not valid. And then we're going to get its magazine type. So magazine type. So go ahead and create a variable. We can call it gun type. And now we're developing for our handgun. So it will be of a type gun type. And we can set it to handgun 2. And what you have to do now is to actually get our gun type and get our magazine type and see if they are equal between each other. And in case they do, we connect cast to BP magazine execution pin to here. The next thing we should check if our magazine is held, because we don't want to put a magazine in our gun if it's not held. So you can basically get your gun to your magazine and it will snap, so we don't need it. We need to hold the magazine in order to insert it into our gun. Therefore, let's get magazine's curl grab component, like this. We can get it right here. Then we are checking if it's held. And now we're going to set our magazine in case it's true. So we can get our magazine variable we have recently created. And on true, we're going to set it like this. You're free to create a reroute node so you could see it better. Then we should stop simulating physics, because if our magazine is inside our gun and our physics is on, our magazine will do some weird things. So we need to disable physics. And also don't forget to compile and save the magazine. That's the thing that was giving us some errors here. Yeah, so we go ahead, magazine. We're getting its mesh. It's called magazine. Let's call it magazine mesh to distinguish. Compile and save. Magazine mesh. We can do it like this. And we're going to set simulate physics to false. Like this. Afterwards, we're going to disable its component simulate physics. So we can go ahead and get its curl grab component and set simulate on drop to false 2. Now, we are sure that our magazine is inserted and it doesn't cause any issues because of its physics. So we can go ahead, get our magazine, and since we're inserting our magazine, we can say play in sound. Like this. So afterwards, we have to get its curl grab component again, like this, and try release. So what we are doing now, once our magazine snaps to our gun, we need to explicitly tell our hand to release the magazine. That's why in here, we set simulate on drop to false. Because we are not releasing the magazine ourselves, we are doing it through the code. So we need to make sure that the simulate on drop set to false. Otherwise, our magazine will simulate physics on drop. And that happens when we release it. And afterwards, we need to bind event on grabbed. So once the magazine is in our gun, we also need to make functionality the next time we decide to grab the magazine from the gun. So that's why we are binding event on grabbed. And let's create a custom event here. And we can call it simulate physics on drop. To be more precisely, simulate magazine physics on drop. So what are we going to do? We're going to get our magazine and get its curl component. So like this. We need to set simulate on drop and we'll have it as true. Like this. Afterwards, we need to unbind event from onGrabbed, like this. And we are unbinding this event. So it might seem a little bit confusing now. I will explain it just in a second. And the last step is actually going to be set magazine to false. We're setting it to false to make this event here trigger again. So if we don't bind this event, imagine we don't have it. We've inserted our magazine in the gun, it has been released, everything is okay. But next time we decide to grab our magazine, we'll have it simulate physics set to false still. It means that if we have our magazine simulating physics, we insert it into the gun, and we take it from the gun, and we drop it, the physics will still be off, so our magazine will be somewhere in the air. That's why we need to bind event on grabbed, like here, and simulate the physics explicitly once we want to grab the magazine, so that we could drop it and it would actually drop, instead of just floating in the air. And afterwards, we need to unbind this event, because the next time we decide to drop the magazine and take it again, we'll explicitly simulate it on drop. So now I will explain it what actually happens on the pictures. In case you understood it, everything is fine, you can go ahead and skip this part. So what is happening here is that we are checking if magazine is not valid. So our gun doesn't have magazine and we need to check it right here. Then on the overlap triggered, we have checked that we don't have magazine. We checking that magazine type is the same as our gun type, and then we are checking if magazine is held. So we need to check if it's held because we don't want to insert the magazine that is not held, right? Afterwards, we're setting it as a variable to our gun. Then we are turning off simulation of physics. We don't want our magazine to be simulating physics because inside of a gun, our gun is also simulating physics. It's gonna start doing some weird things inside. So we turn off simulation of physics and we turn off simulating on drop. We're playing plain sound. At the same time, when it hit the collision box here, we are explicitly releasing it. So we have our hand that's holding a magazine, and this command here explicitly releases the magazine, means our hand is not holding anything right now. Then we binding on grabbed. So now magazine is inside our pistol, let's say. We'll do the logic of insertion in a minute. And here we're binding on grab. We have two ways of getting our magazine from the gun. It's using the button, or it's taking the magazine explicitly. So in case we want to take the magazine explicitly using our hand, so we decided to get our magazine from our hand like this. And once we decide to grab, we need to make magazine simulate the physics. So we could grab it like this, get it out of the pistol, and once we release the magazine, it could drop like it was simulating physics before. That's what this command is doing. And after we have simulated and drop, we unbind all events, because once we decide to grab it again and it's not in the gun, it's going to set simulate physics on drop, and magazine, once we grab it, it will just drop, even if we grab it. So that's what we are doing now. Okay, so if you got it, we can go ahead and continue our logic. So after binding the event, let's actually get it here. We're going to set a timer by event. This event will be responsible for smooth insertion of the magazine. So let's actually get our time to 0.01 as we usually do. Turn on the looping and create a custom event. We can call this event smooth attachment. Then we're going to create a function, smooth magazine attachment, and continue once done. So here, we're going to get our magazine. It's in here. We're going to get its magazine mesh, like this. We can delete this node. We're going to get its world location, get world location. At the same time, we're going to get our gun mesh. And on our gun mesh, if you actually open it, we already have a setup socket for our magazine, so you don't need to do anything. I already did it for you. We're going to get socket location, like this, and our socket name is called magazine. Afterwards, we're going to get world delta seconds. So as you remember, we have a variable slider snap to origin speed multiplier. We're also going to do similar variable for our magazine. Magazine snap speed multiplier, like this. And I'll set it to, and let's set it to 70 for instance. We're going to multiply it by our delta seconds. And we're going to use vinterp2. vinterp2. As our target, we'll have our socket location. The delta time will be the result of this multiplication. And so let's say interp speed will be 1. Afterwards, we're getting our magazine. We're getting its root component and set relative location. The result of our vinterp2. Now let's connect this here. And we need to check if it's already close to our final destination. So let's go ahead and get our socket location and see if it equals to this vinterp2 with the tolerance of 0.01 and return this Boolean result like this. This is the smooth interpolation. We have gone through similar logic when we were doing our slider, so I don't think there is something I can explain here. It's almost the same. Let's hit compile and save. Go back one level. Here we'll use our newly created function, like that, and we'll see if it's close to our destination. In case it is, we're going to get our magazine. We're going to get our gun mesh, and we're going to use attach actor to component, like this. And our parent is gun mesh, and our socket is magazine. Now let's connect our true pin to here. And after it's attached, we need to stop this timer from repeating every 0.01 seconds. So let's actually go ahead and pause timer by function name. And we're going to press F2 here, copy our name, and paste it here. Oh yeah, and also make sure your location and rotation rule are snap to target. That's what's causing the error. Let's go to our game and see if it works. So now, once we insert it, it plays. Once we get it back, we do not play the sound. We'll play it once we press the button. We can grab our magazine away, insert it again, and the bullets are there. Cool. Now we can go ahead and make some comments. So here we are checking, check if we don't have magazine and if we overlap magazine. Here we are making essential checks, checking if magazine and gun types are same and if magazine is held. Let's separate it. Here we are assigning a magazine as a variable, so we don't need to make any comments here. Here we are turning the physics off before insertion. Here we're playing sound, that's fine. Here explicitly releasing magazine, like this. Binding event on our next grab, and we can say that magazine is already in the gun. Here we're setting timer, so timer for smooth magazine insertion happens on next grab. And in the parentheses, we can say that magazine is in the gun. So here we'll simulate it on drop and unbind all events. Unbind this event to avoid not simulating physics after drop of the magazine. Like this, hope it makes sense. On that side, it's interpolation of magazine. We can actually change this return value to has reached the socket. We're checking if it's reached the socket. It's attaching actor to component, no comments, and pausing timer. Stop interpolating. And as usual, I'll make all of this to color black, 23, color black. And just to wrap it off, we can comment everything here and call it inserting magazine. I'll make it font 50 and black 2. Alright, now we can do some sound effects here. So come back to your slider grab and we're going to extend it pretty much like this. And we can move this node to here. Let's delete our true pin, so Alt and left click on the line. So now, once it reached its charging handle max distance, we're going to set reach lock position to true, because that's where the gun is using the cock sound. So reach lock position, we're setting to true, like this. Now we're going to play cock sound, so we're getting our slide grab collision, we're getting its world location. We use play sound at location. And we connect this pin to here, and our sound is the one that we recently created. It's called cocked sound cue here. And we can right away comment it out, play slide cocked sound. We can make this comment a little bit darker. Also, let's go ahead and move this to the top, like here, and this node also. Afterwards, we're going to do some pistol communication logic, so it's regarding bullets, reloadings, all that stuff. So we are going to check now if we have our magazine, because that's the essential check. So let's get our magazine, convert it to validated get, and now we should check if magazine is empty. So we created a Boolean variable in our magazine last tutorial, is empty, and we're going to use the branch. So now, if magazine is valid, we need to check if it's empty. This all functionality we're doing right now is responsible for grabbing the bullet from our magazine. Because here, once we have our bullet and our handle went back, it actually takes the bullet from the magazine and puts it here. And then on the way back, it inserts it into the chamber. So here we're creating logic for this. Let's create a variable and we'll call it dry fire. It's going to be of type Boolean. Dry fire. It should be false as default. So if we have magazine, but it's empty, we're going to set dry fire to our pistol. So our pistol will not fire, it will have a dry fire sound. So in case it's true, we'll set dry fire to true. And also we'll have a variable to see if it's ready to be taken from magazine. So let's also create another Boolean. Bullet is ready to be taken from mag. And we'll set this variable to false. Because if we have magazine and it's empty, we cannot take a bullet from magazine. So our slide cannot take a bullet. And afterwards, we're going to create our variable called chamber has bullet, and we're going to create a branch and connect bullet is ready to be taken from mag here. So in case it's false, we're going to set up our dry fire to false, means that we will be able to shoot in future and our bullet now will be taken from the chamber and connected to here. And if magazine is not valid, we just simply connect it here, like this. So now we can comment it out and say it's gun communication logic. And also let's set it to gray. So if we have a bullet in our chamber already and we do the slide movement until it reaches its maximum position, we're going to throw away the bullet. So as you can see here, I can temporarily enable our round visibility. And imagine we're doing this movement, right? So the bullet is already inside our gun. So what we'll have to do is once it reaches its maximum position on the x-axis, it will throw this bullet away from the slider. Afterwards, we're going to create a function. We're going to call it initiate BulletThrow and set round mesh invisible. So at this moment, our bullet will actually be thrown away in case we have a bullet. So that's why we need this essential check here. So the way our newly created function is going to work is that we're going to have a Niagara system that will actually imitate our bullet throwing. So let's go ahead in our main, in our guns folder, in our guns again, and we're going to go to our handgun, right click, new folder, visual effects. And let's right click, Niagara system, new system from selected emitters, next, and let's choose a fountain, plus finish. And we can call it Niagara system, slide, bullet, ejection. Okay, double click on it. As we can see here, we have our fountain. So the first thing you're going to do is to go to our emitter update and change loop behavior to once. And loop duration mode is going to be fixed. Afterwards, we're going to our spawn rate. We delete it and we add spawn burst instantaneous. Our spawn count is going to be 1 and our spawn time is going to be 0. So as you can see, it looks like the bullet is being thrown away. So we're getting closer. Now we're going to our initialized particle and our lifetime minimum and lifetime maximum. Let's say it's going to be between 4 and 5. You're free to choose your own values. In our mass mode, we can actually go to random and let's say it's going to be between 1.23 and 2. Sprite size mode, we're going to have uniform and it's going to be 0. And sprite rotation mode, I can do it unset. You can play with those settings. I prefer to having unset. Then we're going to our add velocity. So in the velocity section, what I saw is looking good is we can set a velocity speed to 200, or you can go ahead and make random. Let's actually go ahead and make random speed. Random float range. We're going to have between 200, or maybe let's have between 170 and 220. Then our cone axis is going to be like this, and we can go ahead and delete the shape location also. Our cone angle can be 20 degrees, and inner cone angle is going to be 1 degree. We can go ahead and delete scale color, and we're going ahead and we are going to delete our sprite renderer. We're going to put our mesh renderer, and as our mesh, you can click on meshes here. We're going to set our parabellum round. You can zoom in, and as you can see, there is round here, and if we start, it's going to be thrown away like this. So now we hit Control S, we go to our BP gun, we're going to add another variable, and let's call it slide round ejection. It will be of a type Niagara system. Like this, and we hit compile. As our default value, we'll set it to Niagara system slide bullet ejection. And here we're going to get our round. We're going to get its world transform. We're going to split the pins, and we're going to get our newly created variable slide round ejection, spawn system at location. We're going to drag it all here. We're going to connect the execution pin from here to here. And afterwards, we are having our round, so we have thrown this away. We need to send our round visibility to false, because once the round is thrown, we need to send the round visibility to false. And we can add a return node. Okay, this function is done. We're returning back here, and now our newly created function we put right here. And afterwards, we need to create another variable, because when we're initiating the lock sound right here, this sound, I want to create a haptic feedback to our users. And to do this, we can actually go to our grab component, because it contains our effect. Like, we can go to our variables and look for haptic effect on grab haptic effect. So we can actually Control-C from here, go back to our gun, and Control-V. And now let's call it haptic effect. Let's go ahead and create a new function. We need to call it play haptic effect. And as input, we'll have a scale, and we can call it scale. Afterwards, we're going to get player controller, because we need to see which hand we are going to play it on. We're going to drag our haptic effect here. We're going to play haptic effect. Our haptic effect is going to be this one. We connect the execution pin, and our scale will be this one. And our hand, we can get our curl grab component, get held by hand, and connect the result of this pin to here, and add a return node, like this. Let's return to our blueprint and use this newly created function here, play haptic effect. So once we have a bullet and we use the slide, meaning that we have to initiate BulletThrow and set round mesh invisible, and after this we play haptic effect. If we don't have a bullet in the chamber, we just don't initiate BulletThrow. So doing like this. And the result of this pin, we connect here. We're going to play haptic effect with scale 0.8. So what we are going to do, we are going to check if when holding a slide, we reach the point to get the bullet into the chamber. So we just will make it visible. Basically, so what we're going to do, we're going to check if we have reached our lock position. So reached lock position, we're going to make a branch here. And in case it's false, we're going through this branch like this. In case it's true, we need to get our current slide offset. We need to check if it is greater or equal to charging handle max distance plus, and we need to create another float variable, and we'll call it distance to travel back from lock to get bullet. And let's set it to 2. So once we have reached our changing handle max distance, we can go 2 units back, and at those 2 units back, our bullet will be taken from our magazine. We'll add this distance to our changing handle max distance, and we'll check if current slide offset is greater than this distance. And in case it's greater, and here it's going to be false, we're going to get our magazine, convert it to validated get, connect true pin here, and check if magazine is empty. And we create a branch. And in case it's valid, we connect it here, and we just enable the visibility of our round. Round set visibility to true. And this is in case of it's not empty. And we're going to set our reached lock position to false. And we're going to set the chamber has bullet to true. And connect this pin to here. But in case this condition is false or our magazine is not valid, we're going just to connect it right away here. Like that. Let's actually create a reroute node, and we'll connect everything to reroute node like this. And sorry here, in case our reach lock position is true, we're going to get to this branch. But if it's false, we're going to connect it here. And on true, we're going to set our round smash visibility to false, like here. And also we're going to interchange the position of those 2 setters, so we can do like something like that. And after we have set round visibility, so in case it's empty, we need to set chamber has bullet to false, like this. Get it to this node. And also here, we need to remove a round. Magazine, remove round. Okay, so that's what we have in here. Okay, so now just double check everything is correct. So once we have interpolate slide movement, the code is the following. And on the top, we have this. Okay. Now we're going to our releasing the handle. So we can go ahead and do something like that. Also, we can make it a little bit bigger too, because we'll need some space. Now we're going to do the effect for this condition right here. So let's drag it here, break the true link. Once our current slide offset is less than offset to play release sound, we can play our release sound. So let's go ahead and look for our slide release sound cue. Play sound. At location, and our location will be our muzzle mesh, this one, get world location, and connect it right here, and the true pin, connect here. So here we can comment this out, play release sound effect, make it a little bit darker, and afterwards we're going to use the play haptic effect, but now we're not going to use the same function, we're going to play haptic effect on the opposite hand, because when slide releases, it hits our gun and means that we have to get the haptic feedback on the hand that is holding the gun, but not the hand that is holding the handle. So let's go ahead and create a function. We can duplicate play haptic effect function, Control D, play haptic effect on opposite hand. We can go ahead, move this to the right. So now instead of get held by hand, we're going to check if it equals, for instance, to left, doesn't matter. And in case it does, we're going to create a branch like this. So in case we're releasing our handle with left hand, we're playing the feedback on the right hand, and vice versa. If we're releasing by right hand, we're playing on left hand. Like this. Haptic effect, get player controller, and scale. Like this. And then we connect it to return node. Compile, go back, and we can use this newly created function right here, play haptic feedback. And afterwards, we can move those nodes to the right. We connect it right here. Also, don't forget to set the scale to 1. Okay, hit compile and save. Okay, guys, we are almost there. The last part is to finish this code over here when we are returning slide back. So once we start our function by name, we're getting our reached lock position because we need to know if it has reached lock position. It means that we have to set our bullet visibility to true. We get the bullet from the chamber if this condition is true. So let's go ahead and check if we have magazine in this case. Convert it to validated get, true. And we need to check if bullet is ready to be taken from mag. It's a lot of logic, guys, I know, but that's what we have to do. That's how the guns are made, and it's complex. In case it's true, we need to check if magazine is empty. You know what? Let's move it a little bit to the top because we'll need some more space. Like this. Afterwards, if it's empty, we're going to check if our chamber has bullet. Like this. And if it has, we're going to set our dry fire to true. Magazine is empty and chamber has bullet, means we have to play dry sound and shoot the bullet. Therefore, let's go ahead and set our round visibility. Set visibility to false. Afterwards, we need to set chamber has bullet to false too. So now our chamber doesn't have bullet. And reached lock position should be also false. Like this. Okay, so in case this branch is false, we're going to get our magazine. And we're going to remove round. Like this. Afterwards, our round mesh is going to be visible. So set visibility to true. Then we're going to set chamber has bullet to true. And reached lock position to false. Okay. On this false, we're going to set reached lock position to false. Like this. And connect it to dry fire. And if magazine is not valid, we are skipping this branch here and connected it. It looks so confusing, so go ahead and try to understand this logic. It looks really hard and it was hard to do, I know. Take your time and just try to understand it for yourself. Okay, so let's compile and save, and I hope we can jump to our game and everything is gonna work. So we have pistol and we have our magazine. We can insert it. And now we can go 2 times. So as you can see, if you drag it slow and you reach the lock position, you'll start going back. As you will see, you will grab a bullet and you can just insert it back. Also, our functionality has the sound system. As you may notice, I can grab it and I can move it here, release it, and will not hear any sounds. But if you go a little bit further, release it, we'll hear a sound. Also, we have made 2 ways of functionality. So the first one, you can lock the slider and release it. And the second one, you can lock the slider and do not release it, but send it back. As you will see, the bullet is here. And we can do it many times. And also we can do it many times with our regular grab and releasing our hand. We're going from our magazine, and here is the last one. We're doing this, we're doing that, and we have no more bullets. Hope the tutorial helped you get closer to your game with gun integration, and see you in the next part.